So I got a few questions.
Yeah, yeah.
I came in with one, and then you opened up a bunch of you opened up a Pandora's box.
Okay, good. Good. I like that.
So just real quick, I took the Scrum Master certification course with you back in September,
Mm-hmm.
and I got certified, implemented Agile on two of my teams,
Mm-hmm.
and you went and gave me more work. They gave me another project, so now I'm on three projects implementing
Yeah.
Scrum,
Uh-huh.
wearing multiple hats. And the latest project that they got me on, and this is actually perfect because
Okay.
I'm coming in the middle of a program increment, in the middle of a sprint,
Yeah.
um, and just to give you an idea of what I'm working with,
Mm-hmm.
there was no functional requirements documentation.
Oh, okay.
There was requirements are coming in on the fly
Okay.
from different stakeholders. Um, there's no vetting process. They're just
Mm-hmm.
thrown into the backlog.
Okay.
My developers love to just so this is a software development project.
Uh-huh.
We're throwing user stories from one sprint to the next.
Mm-hmm.
I've got backlog items that have been in 4 sprints now,
Mm.
and um, I am trying to reorient, change the culture to more Scrum like. Uh, I'm in Scrum BUT, as you
Yeah,
used to
yeah,
say,
yeah,
which
yeah,
isn't Scrum.
yeah.
But so I guess my question in this case is, you know, I'm changing cultures. I
Mm-hmm.
have to change behaviors.
Yeah.
I have to um, figure out how to get these user stories down to bite-sized pieces that can actually be completed
Mm-hmm.
within the sprint. Um, It's a lot. It's a lot. My
It's
other
too
two
much.
projects are yeah,
It's too
yeah,
much.
they're sailing now. My other two projects, they're good. They're almost handling themselves.
Okay. I have
But
a question
this
for you.
one
Let me
is,
have, let me ask you a
yeah,
question, right?
go ahead.
Okay, so the first thing I need you to do is take your personal feelings out of this one, right? Take your personal feelings out of it, okay? What I want you to do immediately is have a retro, okay? Now, I want you to have a retro because I need you to get them to give you buy-in for what we're gonna fix first.
Gotcha.
Does that make sense? Because
Yeah, and
what you have is a bunch of people that's resisting you already. And they're gonna resist this whole Scrum thing because I was gonna say to you when you initially told me what you told me, why don't you just do Kanban and just forget it, and just track
yeah,
cycle time and then use cycle time to help you improve. But let's stick with this Scrum thing for a minute. So here's the reason why, and I want you to write this down because this is really important. Your objective of the retrospective is to come out with a prioritized list of the problems that you already know exist.
mm-hmm.
Okay? You see them,
I'll get them to say it.
get them to say it. Okay? Now, that means that they're gonna say a few things and it's gonna be lovely, right? Now, I don't know, when you took the class with me, did I give you my retrospective? Like the way I do a retrospective.
I
I
I
take this
can't
5-step
recall.
process and da 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 da.
Uh,
Okay, so let's talk about the real quick. Let's talk about this little retrospective thing so you understand, right? Because I
mhm.
want you to do this and I want you to do this correctly. Okay, and this is like John said, Jedi mind tricks, right? So when I walk into a retrospective, realistically, it's about me facilitating and not being a part of it. Okay? So I make it very clear that I'm on the outside of it and it's going to be more about them. Now,
Mhm.
I'm going to assume that you got a product owner that don't have no power or really ain't got much to say right now. Okay? So that's my assumption in all this because otherwise you'd have way more control on what's coming in, right? So here's what I do. I follow a 5-step process. I'm going to give you these 5 steps real quick. They're from a book called Agile Retrospectives by Diane Larson and Esther Derby. So get the book, okay? The first step is to set the stage. The second step is to gather data. The third step is to generate insight. The fourth step is to decide what to do. And the fifth step is to close. Okay? Now, you can mix and match things inside of each one of those steps, but let me give you what I would do, and then you can modify this as you choose. Are you all meeting physically at this point, or you're still virtual?
We are predominantly virtual, and even when we do meet, we have scattered offices and
Okay.
things like that.
All right, so here's what I want you to do, and you may have to find a tool, and I don't know what the right tool is today. I would think a mural, something like one of those tools that allows people to collaborate. You can utilize if you all have access to that. Prior to those tools being around, I would just use a Google Sheet because a Google Sheet has cell level locking and not sheet-based locking. So anyway, whatever tool, you pick it, figure it out. Just make sure you take the time to understand that tool before you put everybody into it. The first step is set the stage. And normally for me, I want everybody in the room to say one word. I find that when you get everybody to say something, they will talk more later, right? What I do to get them to all say one word is I say, something like this. You're driving down the street in your absolute favorite car, top is down, what's the weather like outside, based on how the sprint went. And boom, everybody gonna have something to say, right? I don't really care what they say. It doesn't matter what they say. You can say, hey, let's do a temperature check on a scale of 1 to 10. Based on how the sprint went, what number would you give? And then you can take all those numbers, add them together, and come out with an average. And then you can use that average from sprint to sprint to sprint to see if the temperature goes up, right?
Okay.
Different things you can do, right? What I would do next is I would just do goods and bads, or moving on to the next step. The next step is gathering data. This is where you want to get them to tell you the problems, right? And so what you want to do is I typically do prouds and sorries, which is found in that book. It's just a version of goods and bads. And what I would do if I was you is I would say, hey, there are wonderful things that you are proud about. If you think about it from a sticky standpoint, in the real world, I would give everybody stickies. In mural, you can give them stickies like this. And they can write on a sticky and put that under a thing called prouds. Does that make sense? So you can use that tool to help simulate this. Or if you're in a Google Sheet, you can actually just create a column and they just add it to the columns, right? And what I would ask them is I would say, hey, there are wonderful and great things that happen during this sprint. I want you to write one per sticky. I want you to put in one thing per sale. Just one thing, okay? And let them come up with their list of goods. And then you're gonna say, there are some things that didn't go so well in the sprint, and let them come up with their list of bads. Same idea, one per sticky, one per sale, whatever tool you're using, right? The idea is you want to separate these ideas out. Now, you just generated a bunch of data at this point. The problem is, it's just a bunch of data. I never go to the prouds because I don't normally have time to get to the prouds. So I'm gonna move into the sorries, and I'm going to start to generate some insight around the sorries. I'm gonna do what's called an affinity grouping. And an affinity is grouping like things. Does that make sense? Grouping like things. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take one of those stickies, right? I'm gonna grab that sticky, I'm gonna read it to the team. They're gonna be, if you're virtual, they're gonna all be able to see it, right? We're gonna read this. And then I'm gonna say, hey y'all, this falls in a particular category or topic, or basically there's a root cause for this. What's the root cause for this? And let them tell me. Nope, John. I am not telling them what the root is. Do you understand? Do you understand that distinction?
Right.
Let them tell you what the root is. Now take this sticky and put it under that category, under that root cause. Okay? Then you go through all the rest of the bads and you do the same thing until they're all under their separate things, because This is going to help you get rid of duplicates and consolidate items as well. Does that make sense? Because some of them will say the same thing, right? So now you have these columns that exist of root causes for problems that exist. What I need you now to do is you're not done generating insight, because I want you to do something else that's really important. I want you to say to them, look, we are not going to focus on the problems. We're going to focus on the root.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to focus on the root. And here's what I want you to do. I want everybody to get some more stickies, and I want you to come up with things that solve those root problems that can be done in a sprint or less. Now note, John, who's coming up with all the solutions now?
Developers, the team.
You see that distinction? I'm making sure that I remain the facilitator, and I'm going to make sure that they're coming up with those things, so they're going to have more ownership at that point, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now I have a list of problems, and next to that list of problems, I have a list of solutions. And I would separate them out by telling them to use a different color sticky in some kind of way, or designate a particular color for solutions, whatever you want to do, or write the word solution at the top of it. Because the thing is that they're going to come up with some similar solutions too. They just are. Because you're going to give them time to do these things. Make sure you give them a little bit of time, and every person time to do that. Now you have a list of solutions. Great. Here's the deal. Everybody don't know what everybody wrote. So the next step is to decide what to do. And here's what I'm doing as a Scrum Master. I'm going to go and look at each category, each root cause, and I'm going to start off with the one that has the most solutions, and then work my way down. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So you're gonna knock out the not necessarily the biggest problems, but
the most ideas that's associated with it. Now you could switch that, and if there was a bigger problem, you could start however you decide to start. I just tend to start with the one that has the most, because normally that's the bigger problem. So what I would do then is I would read each one to them. Every one of them in that category. And if there was one that was like another one, that gives us another place to consolidate or get rid of duplicates. Does that make sense? And here's what I'm going to ask them every time I read one. I'm going to say, hey, y'all, is this thing in your control or not in your control? Anything that's not in their control, John, I'm taking off that board and putting them in another section.
Okay.
I'm going to call that section the escalation section. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So now the only thing that's left on your board, because now you removed all the things that they don't have any control of. So the only things that are left at this point is things that they do have control over. And here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to say to you, now you really decide what to do. I'm going to give every single person, we're going to do what's called a multi-vote. A multi-vote is not just a vote, it's where you give people multiple votes, right? So I'm going to say to everybody, you have 3 votes. You can take your 3 votes and put it on one of those cards, one of those solutions, or you can take them and spread them across. What do you think is the most important thing for us to get done in the next sprint?
Mm-hmm.
And then you give them a few minutes to go ahead and vote. And these tools normally have stickers or something that you can do to, everybody can do to put it on those kind of things. So you make sure they got the ability to do that. And then give them 5 minutes, let them put them all there. Obviously, the one that has the most votes is going to go to the top.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't even worry about that at this point, because now I have the data. And here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to move on beyond this and say, we're going to talk about these things in sprint planning. We're not going to talk about them right now. We're going to talk about these things in sprint planning, because you have 2 advantages. One, they voted on them, so you know what's most important to them. And 2, it's in their control. And 3, they're small enough to be completed in a single sprint. I'm bringing the sprint planning. To close the retrospective out, I always close out with shout outs. If something wonderful and great happened during that sprint, say what happened, call them out, give a shout out, and we move on from there. You always close on a good note because whatever you end with floats into the next sprint.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, here's the deal. When sprint planning comes, you're going to plan some items and you're going to make sure you tell everybody 10% of our time is going toward improvements.
Mm-hmm.
So, I need you all to select from this list here, what do you all think is the most important thing for us to work on in this particular sprint? If you feel like we can work on more than one of them, then we can select more than one of them. And put an owner on it. Not you, because
Mm-hmm.
these are things that are in their control. And that thing has to make it to the done column by the end of the sprint.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So now they're cleaning up the Scrum process, and you know what's the most important things to work on, and you can take care of the things that was on the escalation board
Gotcha.
outside of the room.
Okay. That was my next question.
Right? You take care of those outside of the room. Some of those things you're going to take to manager and be like, we're never changing that. Just get over it. Then you go back to the team and say, they're never changing this. Let's get over it. Okay? So let's not complain about this no more because it ain't going to change. And you start taking care of those things in the background as they're taking on their improvement and they're doing their work. Now you got their commitment in doing these things. Now you got them more excited about the opportunity, about the retro, about them moving forward with this whole Scrum thing. Because the moment that they get time to do things is the moment that they get more excited because they'll start saying things like, I don't have clean enough requirements. Okay, well, there's some that we have control over, and then there's some that we don't. So then where can we make sure that we get cleaner requirements coming through the door? Maybe we just set up a weekly meeting so then we can approve them before they come into a sprint. I don't know what that is. You all can figure that out. But does that make sense? So you see where I'm going. I'm saying to you, improve through having retrospectives.
Mm-hmm. Get the buy-in. Make them own it.
Make them own it, man. Make them own it because you just have a situation where you just got too many things going on. And with too many things going on,
Right.
something's going to fall, man. And then it's going to be a blame on you. And you don't want to force them to do something that they're not really ready to do. They think they're doing Scrum. And that's okay. We're going to help them do better Scrum. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And so instead of switching the process and say, forget this, let's do Kanban and everybody's frustrated. No. You're the best guy in the building and know Scrum. Now go be the best guy in the building and know Scrum. But empower them to do it. Empower them to make the change. And then as they see things are changing, it's just that when they commit to a change, make sure that they're realistic about it and make sure that it actually happens.
Right.
Because when they see that thing make it to done, when they see that this improvement actually happened, they're going to be like, hey, let's get another one.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Snowball effect.
That's the key, man, because you have to remember that you're not in it by yourself. You're not by yourself. There's none of them developers love working on something that they're excited about working on and they're changing on them immediately.
Right.
None of them. Right? They didn't get a chance to finish. But they switching and then they got to come back to that and then their mind is someplace else. So context switching is not the greatest of things and most of them are just asking for time to get the job done. So realistically, get their buy-in by working through it with them. And then you'll be perfectly fine. So that's how I would handle it if I'm you. Does that help?
Yeah. Absolutely. I have a meeting tomorrow with some stakeholders and the senior dev, senior architect, and we're gonna take a shot at prioritizing some of our higher level requirements. We're really working on our customer demo tomorrow because that's this Thursday the sprint closes and we're doing our bi-weekly review. And then I think that leaves
The sprint
Friday
closes, so
for
when is the sprint retro?
that will be Friday.
Okay, yeah, there you go.
So
You be ready to go completely. Just make sure you take time to practice the tool. So you're not fumbling. So pick a tool, practice the tool, get all that stuff set up before you pull them in to it, and then go from there. Make sure you do all that pre-work. It's going to take you some hours to do that seriously. So don't pretend.
Yeah, and you know, just to make sure I don't fumble it, I might use my other projects that I'm more familiar and comfortable with,
Yeah,
just to as a guinea pig.
yeah.
Um, try out this particular methodology, and I'll let you know how it goes.
Yeah, let me know, man. Let me know. It looked like I hit you
Yeah.
with too much immediately.
No, I'm man. I just got my kids to bed, so if I'm
Okay.
tired, that's why.
I understand. I understand. I understand the whole
Yeah.
kids thing. I can relate. So, John, did you have anything else?
Uh, no, I think this is enough to chew on
It
for
is.
now, and I have user stories I got to update, so
Okay.
I'll have you on my second monitor here, and I'll still be here
Oh no,
for
no,
the rest of the ride.
we
But
about to shut the show down, man. We didn't did our
oh,
hours,
okay,
so we're good to go. But John, I appreciate it. You know you always welcome back. You have any questions? Let me know how it goes. Okay. When you do that first retro, let me know how it goes because I probably got some tips for you.
awesome. I'll take good notes.
Okay. You do that. I'll talk to you soon, brother.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Have a good one.
Appreciate your time.